Okay, so we're broadcasting. Okay, so if I was going to screen share, which is what I want to do, so right now it's just recording my camera facing me, but I'm going to screen share and I'm going to say I want to use this screen, and then I'm going to minimize this just to get out of the road because I don't want to share that on the screen, but I do want to share this. So here's my little presentation that I did the other day. I can click on it and go to the actually go back and go into the present mode. Maybe go into present and it gives me the full screen. So now I'm doing my talking and I've got it set up so that my slides advance every 20 seconds, blah, 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 blah. So I talk and I say whatever I need to say for those 20 seconds and then move on to the next slide. It automatically moves on to the next slide and then I start talking about that slide. So, and then when you're done, of course, same thing. It's stop the presentation and it records it into a YouTube video. Bing, bang, boom, go get it, copy it, copy the embed code from that video, and put it in, and you're done.
How did you find that embed code? Remember, was it yesterday we were trying to figure that out?
Oh, on this this thing?
Yeah, like to put
it's actually on the file and publish to the web. So you have to go file, publish to the web, and then it asks you, how do you want? Do you want a link or do you want an embed code?
Oh.
And here's the embed code. And I'm going to actually talk about that today too, because working with this code, we don't have to do it much, but you might as well learn a little bit about how that code works. So, and that's what we looked at yesterday. The size of this is going to set the size of it that's going to embed on your blog or wherever, whatever web page you're putting it on. So right now it's medium size, but you could go large size or a custom size, which means that you can change the heights and widths of it. And these heights and widths are recorded in what are called pixels. So they're units of computer display measurement. They're not like inches or centimeters or millimeters. They're pixels, units of screen size. So, and then you can also set this auto advance, and that's what I was showing you yesterday too. If you go down and look in this code, looks like mumbo jumbo, but as you read through it, you can see there's one place, for example, where it says delay. So that's the delay between slide changing, and it's in microseconds. So right now this is 3,000 microseconds, which means how many seconds is that?
3.
3, because there's 1,000 microseconds in 1 second. So this is set to 3. So if I want to set it to more, so I want it for 20 seconds, what do I have to change this to?
20 or 20,000?
Yeah, 20,000. So I just change that number in there, and I can change it a number bliss. Can I change it in here? Well, if I can't change it in here, I'll be able to change it when I take it over to my blog. So then when I change that, it's going to change this so that it advances the slides every 20 seconds, which is what I want, right? The slides presentation thing tells you, it gives you these options, but that's not the option you want.
So that 20,000 is a 20 seconds?
Yeah, so it's 20,000 microseconds, which means 20 seconds. Now we can go over this a few times too. That's fine. We're going to actually look a little bit. That's what I wanted to start off with looking at today too, is this coding a little bit. I don't expect anybody to be coding experts by any means, but that's the thing about anything to do with computers. Basically, it's based on code. And I think I showed you before one time when we were looking at a web, like even my blog page here. If I right click on this, it opens up what's called a context menu, right? And when I'm on any major web page, one of the things that's available to me is this view page source. And you can do it too. You should do this right now. Whatever you're on, right click and get this little menu and say view page source. So this is
Right click.
Are you on a Chrome page? Just open Chrome or your blog or any web page.
Then right click.
I'm signed in.
It'll be the same. Are you on Chrome?
To view your video live, it's under YouTube?
The video I'm recording right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's on my channel, so if you go to, just search for my channel, ggatin or Glenn Gattin.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the layer that's underneath my blog page. And then, of course, it's made of more layers and layers and layers and layers beneath this too. So this is what's called the HTML layer. This is sort of the code layer that tells my computer how to display my web pages in Chrome, using Chrome. And if I went to a different browser, it would have a slightly different way of doing this. That's sort of different languages that they speak for each application, but they cross-communicate usually so that you can, open the same web page on any different device, no matter who's made it. There's conventions that make it pretty standard, so that I don't have to make a different web page if I'm working on an iPad, or if I'm using a Unix computer or a Linux computer or a Windows computer. It's all going to look the same on the surface, but underneath there's going to be different little bits and pieces. So again, we don't really need to know too much about that, but the more you know about any of this stuff, the better. So just knowing that that's under there, of course, is one of the things. Sometimes you want to go in there and so, for example, here I got this link. Click on it; it's going to take me to that web page. Referenced list layer is telling the computer or the Chrome browser how to display this web page, but there's also some stuff that you can get out of it. There you can grab it. And in fact, if you copied this whole page, if you just went Control-A and then Control-C and went over to another Chrome window, even if it's not connected to the internet, and loaded it into that browser, it would display this page. So, and we're duplicating something. And anything, if you did something like that, you'd have to be aware of the fact that certain copyright issues would arise. Of course, you can't just copy somebody else's work without attribution. So, but anyway, as I said, we've been working with this a little bit. We've been working with the embed codes, right? So when we go into a YouTube video of any kind, go and look for, again, any YouTube video, some that grab one that you've created even. And I think probably you should all have some in your channels now. But yeah, any YouTube video.
I didn't realize how many diapers.
And when you look down into the share, it's going to generate this embed code, which is what we're looking for when we're embedding things. But if you look at some of this, you can see width and height. That just makes sense. How wide do I want this? How high do I want it to be? Do I want to have a border around it? Right now it's set to 0. Should it autoplay? So as soon as I go to hit, if I put this as a link or I'm embedded it in my blog, as soon as somebody opened that up, should it automatically play? No, not usually. Yeah. Allow full screen. Is not working? Yeah, so let's click that. Well, you're actually on the thing there. Go off to the side. Yeah.
Oh, right here.
Because you're clicking on the thing. So remember that right-click menu is always context-based. So if you're in an image, it's going to give you the context of that image. But if you're somewhere else, anywhere else on the page, it's going to give you the context of what's going on.
Okay, thanks. I was clicking on that.
Yeah, so grab your code, look at it, inspect it. As I said, you can tell what it's going to do. You can customize this a little bit as we go along here, and we're going to see some of the settings that you can do right in the code itself. One of the things that somebody brought up yesterday, and I think it was Sheena was asking about this too, was Google Docs. So if you wanted to embed a Google Doc, I'll show you what happens when you try and embed a Google Doc. You get this thing. Let me see if I can find a recent. Well, let's just do it with this one. We were fooling around with this Zotero test document. So I want to go file and I want to publish it to the web. And then I want to embed this. So here's the code that it's going to give me. Yes, okay. Here's the code that it gives me when I want to embed a Google Doc. And you can kind of see this thing. This little chunk of code is what's called an iframe. And it always starts with this, you know, the brackets, the iframe, SRC means source equals, and then it's the link, the actual link to that document. And a few little things in there, but at the end of it, the end of any little chunk of code usually ends with the same command, but with a slash out of it. So you can see down here, if you look at the first one, it says iframe. This one here, it says slash iframe. So that means it starts here and it ends here. But let's go check it out what this does. So I'm going to just copy this. I'll go over to my my blog, and I'll just make a new page for this just for fooling around. And I'm going to switch to the HTML editor, right, which is this thing that has lets us do this level of coding here. It's really nothing magical or too hard to understand, but here's that same code again. As I said, starts with iframe, SRC source equals, and then this is the link to that actual Google document. All this mumbo jumbo, bumbo jumbo, embedded, yes, true, that's what is true, and then ends finally then with this closing tag, and these things are called tags. So iframe, that's an iframe tag. So now I've got this, but let's publish it and see what it looks like. So I'm going to call this iframe.
I didn't get embed code.
On your Google Doc,
Yeah.
when you clicked on this, when you published it,
Yeah,
publish
when
to the
I
web.
Publish it. It should give me the thing when I publish it, right?
Yeah,
Did you embed the user?
yeah. You have to switch maybe between link and embed.
Yeah, I did that.
Okay,
It just says,
and then publish. Did you click publish?
yeah, well, publish it, but the embed code is like, I don't have that box like you do.
Oh. Do you have code though?
No.
Maybe it automatically put it in your clipboard, and that's what happens sometimes. See if you can go. If you go back to
So
the.
you view the source, right?
Yes.
From there, where
Yeah.
do you go from there?
So is everybody at this point, have you got the code and you put it on a page in your blog?
No, trying.
Okay, let's get to that point because that's where we're doing.
I'm viewing the source.
Okay, no, we want to get out of it, we're done with that.
Oh,
We're going to Google Docs. So close that. Well, you can keep those sort of going on the side.
And
Yeah, so just open another tab. Okay, that works. Yeah. You go down to Google Docs. And there should be something in your collection. Even that one, the one that I'm working on there. That,
this one?
yeah, and again, we're just fooling around on this. So
Oh.
now go to File. And go down to where it says Publish to the Web. And now, embed, yeah, and then publish. Yes, okay.
So hard to see the screen,
There you go.
especially when the sun comes up.
Oh, yeah.
But it's another page.
Yeah, find another page, just a little demo page, just so we can fool around with it. You can get rid of the paper too.
See?
Publish to the web, okay, embed.
New page
It
not
doesn't give
too.
me,
Eat it.
so like what
Did
I,
you click publish?
no,
Oh, yes.
but that's what I thought this was that.
No, you gotta publish it.
Just
Because it doesn't give you the code.
Oh,
That's fine.
Really?
So you find a Google Doc?
Oh,
Yeah,
goodness,
and
tired.
that's a general test on that, that's really what I'm talking
How come
about.
this?
And over on the left-hand
I don't
side,
have
file,
Wali ng tanay ko.
published to the web.
Ano man, HT Bumay, ready to go.
Right here, look, this is how I went. I embedded it. And then we go to your new page.
Copy that code, it's all those are just control C.
Get lost here.
Not going to your blog.
Ganyan naman.
Okay, yeah, start with another page, just, this,
Okay,
that's a new post.
Control C.
Yeah, make a page, just so you can, so it's separate. And then just switch to the HTML,
Folder na kita yan. No.
Control V. Okay, so there's the code for this, and you can this title just sort of, iframe
Concentrate.
practice.
So you're gonna know this is a practice, what if we upload
Well,
practice?
you will know, and you can decide whether you want to keep it on
Okay.
or blow it away if you want to, so, but it's just, we have to have enough space where we can display it. Okay, so in there. Yeah, so if you publish that now, publish that page on your blog, what do you see? I'll do it here. If I publish this page, what do I see? I see, view it. What do I see? I see this funny little thing. My document's all in there, but it's useless because I can't read anything like that. I mean, maybe this I can, but.
So we go to pages, right?
So you went to pages and you embedded the code for that document on a page, just a random page that we're fooling around with. Okay. Yeah, we can call it that, because that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go actually find a better iframe. The one that Google Docs gave us is a cheap iframe. Can't do
See,
it.
how come when I go to Google Docs,
Yep.
how come I don't have that HTML?
So,
Where is
did you
it?
publish one? Did you find a page that you've got something on already?
Oh,
Even that one. Listen, here, this is analysis right now, I'll click on that. And then under
Let's
file,
okay.
publish to web. And embed. And then publish. Okay. And there's that code that you want. So just Control V or Control C now. Now go back to your web, your blog.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Right there,
Yeah,
yeah. And,
no, that's not my blog.
no, that's your.
Go get it.
That's it. Prepare a new page on here. And a new page.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
See, that's the one.
Well, that's what you look for, the editor, the HTML editor. Okay, Control V. Now call this page, just give it a title for iframe exercise.
Where's my putting it on my
We're gonna
blog?
make a iframe, change the
Yeah,
iframe.
it's on your blog.
Yeah, put it on a page in your blog so it displays someplace, right? The word Janelle mute?
Yeah.
You okay? You good?
Either that's in.
So, as I said, this is what it looks like. This is the embedded Google document, but you can't see anything of that. And even if you try to change this, I'll go to this and edit and see if I could change the size of anything. Is there anything in here that shows me what the size might be? Any clues? Most of the time, remember we saw that said width and height? Nothing. So what we got to do is get a better iframe, an iframe that has more ability to it. So if you go back into the blog for today, my post for today, I actually put a link to a thing called W3 Schools.
On your link?
Yeah, on the day's page here for the course. Or you can just search for W3 Schools too. So, but if you get it from here, W3 Schools, this is a fabulous resource. If you're interested in doing any kind of coding or teaching yourself, you can pretty much teach yourself just about anything about computers, right from doing what we're doing, HTML coding, right through learning how to do different computer languages. So it's, and all these things are different computer languages that are used to generate and make programs. And this is what the big dogs are working with all the time, is using this. But you can actually use this website to teach yourself any of this stuff. And it's all broken down into little lessons. So right now we're talking about HTML. And you can see each element of HTML, which is what we saw when we looked at that view source, those are all elements of HTML. So each element sort of has its own little name along the side here. So once you get used to it, you can find just about anything you need to change on here, modify. And again, you really don't need to know how to write any of this stuff. You just need to know where to find it and how to copy and paste. So we're going to go down here and we're going to look for a thing called iframes. And the way this is set up is that every page on here is basically a tutorial on how to do all this stuff. So HTML5 is kind of the new name for it. But look down here. Here's the sort of the first iframe that we can see. Is everybody on this page? Did you find me? If you look at iframe, the way language is written, syn tag, the opening tag, the end tag, and then it gives you this source equals, and they've just got URL written in there. But if you pasted that, the URL to your published Google document, that's what show up. But that's not much good to us either. That's what we already have. What we want is this one. Look down here. So in this case, we've got the iframe tags on the start and the finish. We've got the place to put the source, but we've got some adjusters on here. We've got some things where we can adjust the size of it. So we can adjust the height, we can adjust the width. And that's probably what we going to want to use. There's a few other things that we could do, and you can explore all these different things as you go through this. You can, as I said, do the tutorial and teach yourself how to do all of this stuff. But for now, let's just go grab that first one here, the one with the sizer in it, and just copy it. Just highlight it, Control C, go back to the page that you've created this, where we want to embed this Google Doc. Okay, and then I'm just going to paste that code in there. There's nothing there yet because I haven't linked it to anything. But I want to take this address, so everything inside the quotation marks, which is my published page, I want to take everything out of this side of that set of quotation marks right down to where it says true, and I want to copy that. I can actually exit, cut it out of there. And then down here, I want to find inside the quotation marks again. So I want to replace what's inside the quotation marks in the sort of little model thing with the source that I want it to go to. I want it to go to the page that I just published. So I just paste that code in there and get rid of this. Now I don't need this anymore at all. And now I've got a new iframe that has my source in there, which is the source is the page, but I've got some adjusters on it. Right now the adjusters are 200 by 300. So I don't know if you've sort of been following or watching these as we go along. Our pages, the way we've set most blog pages, are set up to be about 800 wide. So let's try that. I'm going to try 800. I think I've got mine set a little bit wider than that even, but you can change that. And then usually try and keep things a little bit proportional. So let's say, I'm going to say this, make this one 600. What is that going to look like? So now I just published this, or I published it before. I'm going to update it, and I'm going to go view it. And now where I used to have that little squinty little thing that you couldn't even read anything on, now you've got an embedded document that you can actually read. So that's using iframes. we could fool around and experiment with some of the other iframes here. What's the difference in this one? In this case, it's called style border, an iframe with a border around it. But mostly that's what we're interested in, is getting this sizing handle for this little exercise. So yeah, so now I've got a document here. The other thing, of course, that I could do is that if I was really interested in displaying this wide on this page, and that's usually what you're doing if you're doing something like this, I could go into my design. And remember how we did this? We went into theme and went down to customize. You can sort of follow along with me as I'm doing this too. I'll try and sort of make sure everybody follows along. So when you're on the theme and the customize, you can go into where it says adjust widths. You see along the top here, my blog, the main space of my blog, I've got adjusted to be right now 1240 pixels, whatever the heck those things are. And then on the same thing on my left sidebar, I've got adjusted so it's 260 pixels. But I could change any of those just by sliding this thing. So you can see how that moves. It's going to adjust that. So if I'm displaying mostly things that I want to show up in the middle of the page, and most of the time when you're doing things for education, that's what you do want to do, especially if we're doing things like embedding YouTube videos. Why would we want to have an embedded YouTube video rather than just send somebody to YouTube? Same thing when I'm adjusting this main space. You make it as big as I want. It's going to be funny. We'll have to fool around with this to make sure that it works the way I want it. And then once you've got it sized and set up the way you want, apply to blog, and then go back to Blogger. So now when I view this blog, it's going to have changed everything on my blog, of course. But if I go look at this particular page, it's sort of, I narrowed down this a little bit, and I made the main space wider so that you could view things on my blog. And the reason you want it to do it on your blog, you want people to stay on your blog. You don't want to give them a link so they click off to Google Docs, because what happens when somebody clicks off to Google Docs? They're gone. They're exploring. What happens if somebody gets, you send somebody a link to a YouTube video? What happens? Well, YouTube videos are all like this, right? They all have all this stuff on the side. They all have this comment stuff down here. You've all spent time on YouTube. You know what happens in the side here. These are all suggestions. They might be good suggestions, but they might be something really inappropriate. Same thing in the comments. Anything that happens on social media, it could be anything in the comments, right? Sometimes, people play along, but sometimes people are really rude and inappropriate, and you wouldn't. The last thing you need is your grade 5 kids going home and saying, "Oh, my teacher showed me on YouTube, and right on the comments somebody said." You'd be getting a phone call. You'd be getting somebody from the principal's office saying, "Did you mean to do that?" So no, you don't have to. So if you go into this share, and I mean, it's still not going to prevent that altogether, but let's go get this embed code, grab that, and go back. Oops, sorry, I got to grab the code and go back to my blog. I'll put it on this same page just because it's available. What shows up on this page when I embed the YouTube video? I got it. Myself a little space here, and now update, and then go look at this now. So where is it? Oops. Oh, I missed it. I didn't. Page. I should have been able to tell. Okay, here it comes. Yeah, I want to get rid of that, and I want to put Still not. Can we do that? Still not giving me that code from here. What's going on? Control C, yes, I'm doing that right. Back to the blog. Something's stuck in my, something's stuck in my clipboard. Can't get rid of this in my clipboard. All right, let's try something else. Let's start from scratch. And sometimes you just have to keep fooling around with this because it's the same old thing with computers. They never do what you want them to do. They only do what you tell them to do. In this case, I must have been telling them something that it didn't like. Oops, I don't want to undo it there. Where do I want to go? I want to go back to.
Oh, I lost it.
Me too. I want to edit this page. Still not. I don't get it. Something's jiggered.
I'm just getting tired. Close all my.
Oh, there it is.
Is this working for anybody else? Or is everybody else getting the same grief that I'm getting? Okay, no, look, I got it now. Okay, for some reason now it's decided to work. But look here. Now this is the YouTube video that I just went and grabbed the code for. And I can adjust some stuff in here. So again, the same thing. It's got an iframe with an adjuster, size adjuster. So I can adjust it to, and I'm going to make it, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make it 800. 100, and I'm going to make the height 600. And there's sort of proportionate controls for these things that you can figure out in sort of standard ways, standard dimensions, and standard proportional ratios that you can work out. But we'll try this for the time being. So some of the other things that you could see, you could turn off or on a lot of these things. But I just want to, I'm going to update this now. So now when I view this page, what do I see? Well, there's my embedded document, but now I've got my YouTube video embedded on here in the size that I said I wanted, right? 800 by 600. Different than what you would get from just from the regular code from the YouTube video. So if I want people to view things on my blog, I'm going to make it visible and viewable on my blog of a proper size so that they can watch this here without having to go to YouTube. Because I don't want them seeing all these associated videos and getting distracted and off on a wild goose chase or something. And I don't want them looking at the comments because you can't ever trust what's going to be on the comments. So when you've embedded it, it doesn't take those things along. It only brings the actual video content, which is what you want. If you're using it for education purposes, that's where you need to and want to be able to do this, and comparatively simple to do. So that's a little bit of working with iframes. Again, technology is getting more complex all the time. The last set of protocols for web page development were called HTML, and now they're called HTML5 is sort of the next generation of these things. So they keep advancing all the time. Seems like the stronger the computers get, the more intricate and complex they can display on computers. And you've probably noticed this if you've been using and buying computers for a few years. Now, the earlier computers, if you tried to run some of the programs that you want now on an earlier computer, it just doesn't work, right? They don't have the oomph, they don't have the storage capacity, they don't have the processing power, they don't have the RAM space, they don't have the oomph, we'll call it. And I was talking about here, there's this thing called Moore's Law. and they've been watching the progress of technology for, I don't know, for a long time, since Moore developed his law anyways, and his law was, and it was in the early days of electronics and developing transistors and capacity like that. And he said, technology, this type of technology is advancing at a fairly predictable rate. So every 18 months or 2 years or so, it doubles in its capacity. And the cost of it reduces by half. So if you think about it, and think about just any technology that if you've been watching it, like these phones, right? The capacity of things, these things have increased on that schedule. Every 2 years, they double in their capacity. And the price of them drops by half. So I was actually just looking at this phone. I thought I just bought this, but I guess it's a while ago. This is a LG V20 hot spit phone. When I bought it first, I like it because it's got a battery that I can change in it. That was on it. But even when I bought this, the next version, V30 was available, which had some other features. It was waterproof for one thing, but it didn't have a removable battery, so I didn't upgrade to it. But I saw now, I forget what I paid for this. I think I paid about $400 for this when I bought it. And it was the older version so it wasn't the V30, it was the V20, so I got a hot deal on it. But now I just saw there was a little site on there, somebody was saying the V30s and V35s are now available for under $400. And the next best thing is I gotta buy it, right? Apple's horrible for this, right? They give you an iPhone and literally 2 years later, it's almost obsolete. They almost don't update the operating system for them anymore. I've got an Apple phone at home that was one of the first Apple's iPhones that were available. It doesn't work anymore. Well, it works on some stuff, but I can't update the operating system, so I can't download any of the modern Apple applications on it. So it's basically it's a audio player. It's a iPod, basically, is what it is. So anyway, so that's this Moore's law, and we can see how it works. So, and that just tells you that we can expect this to continue this way. They've been following this for a long time, so technology is just going to change. That creates a challenge for everybody, of course, and one of the, I guess, skills that you have to have, or attitudes that you have to have in this field, is expect that there's going to be change, and it's going to happen fast, and you're going to be scrambling to keep up. So you got to always be in this, what they call perpetual beta. What's beta testing? You ever come across that term, beta testing? And they're developing new technologies. They have an alpha test. So the first one, the guy writes this program first, he writes it and he releases it as an alpha version. So alpha means A, like A, B, C, right? Then they have the beta version. Once they've refined it and developed a little bit more, they develop this beta version that they let everybody use. And of course, the idea is that when everybody uses this, everybody finds all the glitches and the problems and the issues and gives them feedback, and they can correct this version of this program. And then finally, when everybody else has tweaked this out for them, they release the release version, right? And that they charge you for. So you've done all the work to perfect their program, but then they want to charge you for it. They want to sell it to you. So we have to get it, and of course, usually that the release versions often don't even come up. Most of the time, stuff stays stuck in beta. It seems like we've got to get used to living in a beta world. It's never finished. It's never complete. So that creates some challenges for us. We want to have the latest version. We want to have the finished version, but it doesn't exist, and it might never exist because it's always in flux. It's developing so fast that we can't even stay ahead of it. So that's a challenge, because when you're working with technology, that's the one thing you can count on, is that it's going to change. It's change. So, and I guess that's the same with society generally too. Society responds to technology. There's two theories. And I'll go into these a little bit more later too. There's two theories of how technology and society work together. One theory says that somebody comes up with the technology, and then society figures out how to adapt it, how to use it. The other theory says society has a need, so somebody comes up with the technology to fulfill that need. So the technological determinism says that somebody makes a technology, we figure out how to use it. So Twitter, for example, is a good example. Somebody figured out how to use this communication channel called Twitter, didn't know what we were going to use it for or how we were going to use it, but they just put it out there. And then as people used it, it developed into what it is now. And it's actually still moving and still developing. So the technology determined in the first place how society was going to organize. But now society has taken off and said, well, we want to use it for politics, or we want to use it for sports, or we want to use it for shopping, or we want to use it for different things. So now society has said, we're going to use Twitter for this thing. So those two forces are always in play. Technology, available technology, as opposed to the technologies that society wants. So interesting theoretical perspective on that too. So I'm still thinking about working. I'm trying to give you some clues every time as I go along with to look at the lesson plans, what you're working with in the lesson plans. I'm still bumping things up into the Zotero groups in the files that we've designated over there. If you look at that today, if you go open your Zotero account on your computer and look in your group, the PENT 2019 group that I've added you all to, or you've added yourselves to, and look into things like lesson planning. I've been adding resources in there. I'm going to have to synchronize this to catch up with what I've added in there. What I'm adding as I go along, every day I do a little bit of research, and I follow a bunch of blogs, and a bunch of resources come to me. So when I see something I think was going to work for this class, I bump it up into Zotero. So I'm not going to read you articles, but the articles are here. So for example, 32 research-based instructional strategies. We actually looked at this yesterday. Remember how we get to it from the Zotero post? Click on where it says URL. And this is the thing we were talking about. So, and that's what I'm asking you when you're developing your theory of teaching, your pedagogy. What is your preferred instructional style? And you know, is it one of these? They've described 32 of them here that you might have to do a little bit of more research into, but some of them have links to them as you go along. So one of the sort of the standard styles of teaching that exists most often in classroom settings, where you've got one teacher at the front teaching to a classroom, to a group, it's called direct instruction. And that's probably what most traditional or conventional teachers feel most comfortable with, is this idea: I tell you what you need to learn, I tell you what it is, and then I test to see if you learned it. Okay, and that's kind of the way our system's built too, based on that. We know that there's a curriculum that people need to learn. We know we pay teachers to deliver the curriculum. So, but others and other circumstances, people have realized that that's really doesn't do it. That doesn't cut it completely. So we need to use other strategies. So you can see reciprocal teaching, concept mapping even actually is a style of teaching. So using concept maps like we're using for lesson planning. Teacher clarity, so establish learning goals, expectations, setting goals and objectives. What else? A consistent low threat assessment. Low threat assessment, very important, so that we don't terrify people such that they can't even answer anything. So you could look through these and see which ones match your style or match your inclination, your preferred mode of teaching. You might have to do, as I said, a little research to see what they actually mean, and see if that's what you subscribe to. Is that part of your pedagogy? Is that part of your philosophy of teaching? And can you change it? Can you use it? There's a couple of things that I've included in here. In fact, I'm going to go down to this first one when we're talking about pedagogy. And I hope you're going to all use this in your presentation. I should have mentioned this yesterday. this TPAC framework. So this is a framework that they've been actually working on this for quite a while too. How do we integrate content knowledge, technological knowledge, and then pedagogical knowledge? So content area, of course, is grade science. It's the content that you're going to deliver. The pedagogical knowledge is, how am I going to deliver that? What's my teaching strategy for delivering this particular lesson? And then finally, what technology am I going to use to support the teaching of that objective? So they call this TPAC model. And when you're developing your ICT pedagogy strategy, I want you to consider these things. And I've got the page linked on here too. I linked it into the Zotero group as well. So the TPAC framework should show up in here. Actually, it shows up in theories. So I put it in the theories. Same thing I did with theories. As I said, as I've been going through things, I've been looking and I've been adding them to our shared Zotero group. So if you're looking for resources about your pedagogical theory, I'm trying to add them as I go along here too. So you can look through them. Actually, I was looking at some interesting stuff. I'm taking another course myself on Indigenous-based education, land-based education. Fascinating, this whole thing. Found a bunch of resources on that. A Cree Elder's perspective on land-based education, a case study. So somebody's written this up. Of course, I'm interested in how ICT intersects with land-based education. So, and it does quite a few different places. I found this great article. Did I put it on here already? Anyway, you'll have to poke through some of these too, just take a look at them. Land-based education, I'm going to go teach this same class up in Opaskwayak. And of course, their main model up there is land-based education. That's one of their main themes in that education program. So how do we integrate ICT technology into Indigenous land-based education systems? Yeah, interesting stuff for sure. The other thing that I linked on this map now in terms of lesson planning. So first we got sort of two tasks that you have underway, right? For the big money, for the final grades. You're doing your presentation on your pedagogy, ICT pedagogy, but then we're also designing these lessons. So I'm trying to keep those two things focused as I'm putting resources up. So here's one thing about, this is called the SAMR framework for adapting conventional teaching, conventional education processes using technology. So here's a couple of the things, and this is kind of an interesting little framework again, and it's a set of guides for you as you're designing web-based or ICT or online or technology-enhanced learning or whatever you want to call it. First of all, substitution. And then this is in terms of enhancement. If you're just enhancing your lessons, your delivery, your practice, your teaching practice, then you might be doing things like substitution. So technology acts as a direct tool, substitute with no functional change. The lesson, the information is all the same. It's just substituting what you're doing. Augmentation. So augmentation means it adds to it, right? So technology acts as a direct tool, substitute with functional improvements. So it augments it or adds value to the process that you're using. Then if we're talking about transformation, if you're modifying your teaching practice, then this is what happens. Technology allows for a significant task redesign. So, for example, if we were to do a significant task redesign for this class, it would be all on the YouTube video. You wouldn't come and sit here. You'd watch it where you wanted to and do the task from wherever you wanted. So we'd modify that whole thing. And that would require a redefinition. And all these things are transformational. So this is another theory of education now, current theory of education called transformational learning. Transformational education. We're trying to transform society at large. We're trying to make it a better place, and we're trying to prepare students to participate in a transformational society, one that's changing and getting better. So it's kind of an altruistic kind of a way of looking at things, but yeah, that's what we want, right? We want positive outlooks and positive outcomes. That's why we're paying darn good money for all this education. So anyway, so this is this SAMR framework. Sorry, Mom. Can't talk now. Wait a minute. Yeah, so a couple of little clues and little things to consider as you are doing your plannings, both for the pedagogy presentation and also for as you continue with your lesson planning. So how many are done planning their lessons? Halfway done? Halfway done? Yeah. Well, in fact, getting started is halfway done. Because if you find your topic area and your grade level and your specific learning objective, you're halfway done, basically. And if you've got something posted at the top of your blog like this, you are 2/3 of the way done. So, okay, so now you know where you need to be. But I have no hesitation, no doubt that everybody here is going to do fine. I mean, as I said, I've been trying to make it so that I ensure that you've always had a blog post. So you're going to get the full, how much do we get for blog posts? 40% for the blog posts. As long as you've had a little bit of a reflection element on each one of the blog posts, you're going to get full marks for the blog. The presentation, 20 slides with 20 seconds of narration, easy money. Or how much is that worth? 40 for the lessons and 20 for the presentation, right? So as long as there's something there, you're going to get something. And as I've been going through everybody's blogs now, and I have been doing this routinely, there's very few here that are in trouble. Everybody's in good shape. So it's just now how close to 100 you want to get. Get right there. It's easy money. But there's got to be something there. So lesson planning, of course, is probably the one that's going to take the most effort, really. The ICT pedagogy, of course, you're going to have to think a little bit about you. How do you think about education? What direction do you want? And maybe you can't even describe your style right now because you don't have one yet. If you haven't taught yet, maybe you can't clearly articulate your preferred approach to teaching. So then this is your chance to develop one. Choose one that sort of fits and makes sense to you. So, and make a presentation on it. Say it out loud. You ever notice that? You can think things in your head all you want, but until you actually say them out loud, they don't really mean anything. So I can make myself a promise to change something, but unless I say it right out loud, it doesn't happen. So that's a way to anchor things in your own, as a process, part of your own learning process. So what else did I look at today? Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and do the test. You ready for the test?
What kind of test?
The one we made yesterday.
Okay.
The easy one.
Easy one?
Easy. The fun one. The one using the Google Forms that you're going to want to learn how to do this. Yes. Let's have a break and then we'll go do that. And then we'll wrap up for the day. We'll wrap up for the day, but I'll stick around if anybody wants some coaching or help with anything.
Yeah, I got questions.
Yeah, good. Yeah, no problem. I'm going to put a link to that W3 Schools on the side of my blog if anybody's interested in going and finding that, any little snippets of code that you want. Like I said, if you're trying to put that Google Doc on there and it was just giving you that goofy little player, you want something better. I'm so excited. So who did finally show up?
Me.
You, yes.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm
I'm
not.
here. But I'll probably leave early too.
No, well, we're gonna shut it down right there. So. Just say I'll stick around and coach anybody that's interested in anything, but. Haley, yeah? Yeah, you? Myrna, no, Myrna actually emailed me or Skyped me. No Amber. No Liz. Bernadette. Steve.
I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this.
So, hello.
Do you know where I could find Jason Bone? The instructor. Upstairs.
So,
No one's in there. Oh, could I probably done there even?
I don't know.
Okay, that's my podcast. I just wanted you to look at it so far. If it looks like it's going in the right direction, I hope you can see it.
Put it on your thing, and I'll look at it. Just put my little note in your blog post today. Say, can you look at my lesson plan?
So
I don't do paper.
you don't do paper.
I don't do paper.
I mean, this is 10 cents. It costs per.
I just don't do paper.
Okay, well, if this is the right way, then I feel good about it.
Send me a link to it on in a Skype or a message or.
I'll give you 10 cents. You owe me.
No, I didn't know. You know nothing. I told you before. I told you again. We have the technology.
I think it's. I have more than one.
It's hard to get for this here. You're doing
Thing. Cognitive domain or affective domain, right?
Yeah. Those are other activities within the affective domain are things like valuing or evaluating. And if you look on that continuum, it actually expels those out.
Well, that's what
Different
I followed, and then
Yeah.
the psychomotor is and I heard
Yeah,
it,
physical things,
Yeah.
yes. So what you get your,
Or should you?
yeah, in fact, that's what I'm saying. You should always consider that when you're building a lesson or constructing a lesson or planning a lesson. How am I going to support people affectively
And
so that
then
they feel confident in their ability to
the
learn?
Bloom's taxonomy, I can use as many stages as I want, right?
Well, no, that's the target that you're shooting for, right?
Yeah,
So it usually depends on people's developmental stages, right?
yeah.
So early years learners, you can only expect them to learn up to a certain level of the Bloom's taxonomy because they don't have the horsepower to do the advanced evaluation. Whereas if you're, if you're talking about middle years, well, then you can expect more of them. You can expect them to analyze, apply things. But then when you're talking about, you know, higher level, you know, high school and beyond, then you're expecting people to perform at the highest level. So when you're designing your lesson, that's your expectations.
Because I used 3 stages. Mine was language.
Yeah.
So remembering, then understanding, and then creating.
Okay, but you should probably pick the highest one that you expect.
To create.
Okay, so then is that appropriate for the age level that you're talking about?
Well, it's with guidance, like, they're just gonna be able to speak the language on the podcast.
Right.
Like, going with the show them.
Right.
So I'm gonna be helping them create it, but.
Okay.
To make their own.
But are you expecting them to create it?
Like physically create it?
Well, is it a podcast you're saying?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna do it and then they're gonna make a podcast later, that's how they're.
Okay, so you're gonna model it for them and they're gonna actually do something. Okay, so that's, you know, sort of halfway up that Bloom's taxonomy. There's quite a few different ways of sort of measuring the expectation you have for your learners.
Mm-hmm.
But you wouldn't expect, say, if you were sort of designing a lesson to get them to the stage where they could create something, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to be able to analyze it or use it in another context or what's at the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy.
Well, that depends if you're doing a flipped classroom.
Yeah.
Then it's like opposite, right?
Well,
kind of like they're creating it first and then they're.
Yes, although again, you still have to, even in a flipped classroom, you sort of have to designate the expectations you have for these students. You wouldn't expect them to have the most complex cognitive abilities if they're just not built that way yet. You know, it's part of human development. So we only develop the capacity to do complex thinking as a result of education, as a result of learning, as a result of aging too, as brain development, of course, that all figures into it. But when we're in kindergarten, we just don't have the horsepower. I call it horsepower. Somebody objected to that. Steam power, whatever. Yeah. But who's following along on Skype? Anybody? Can you hear me? Can you hear me on Skype? I think I can set up comments on this broadcast too at the same time. So they could be having a chat right in the room. Is everybody back? That's coming back? If you go to the web page, you can see there's a link. I've got the test. There's a link on my post for today. Click on that link. What do you see?
Please?
Penn 2019 ICT quiz.
I can't think right now.
No, you don't. You don't even have to think. It's so easy.
Oh, the test?
Okay, I don't know if you're accepting responses.
Right. So I haven't turned it on yet. I haven't turned the test on yet. So I just want to show you how you can manage this. If you're using this to test your students, building tests, you have control over it. So when it starts and then when it stops. So you say you get an hour for this test. Well, you turn it on now, you turn it off in an hour. If people haven't got their responses submitted, they are, how do you say in English? Out of luck. Anyway, so I'm going to go to this. So I'm going to go over to this now because this is my test that I've developed. This is in my Google Drive, one of my forms, and maybe I'll just go right back to through the whole thing so I can show you where I've got it. So go into Drive, go into my resources. I had an ICT quiz from before that I used with the last class. And I think there was 25 people in that class. So they all took the test and scored on it. They'd all done the same. We did the same thing in the other class too. We all contributed questions to it. So then I just added some of the questions that we developed yesterday in this class and changed it, made a copy of the test, cleared out all the responses from that test and put it up here. So now I'm going to turn it on. So this is a test with 21 questions in it. Each question is worth 1 point, although I guess I could go through that and change that too. You could actually, if it was 20 questions, yeah, that's probably what I do is change it to 5 so it comes out to 100, right? So that I don't have to do complicated math. I hate complicated math. But here's some of the things that I can do as I'm distributing this test and developing it, I can change all these different things. This is the little overflow icon. Actually, for the forms for this test, it's got settings. So I've got some settings that I have to consider on this thing. So because I'm going to get you to join this thing by a link, I'm going to have to collect the email address from you. So in order for you to take the test, you're going to have to put your email address in. I could send this to you individually by your individual email addresses, and then only you would be able to take this test once. But because I've done this the way it has right now, so I've had to specify here, collect the email, so you won't be able to start taking this test until you give me an email. And then I still have checked this off to limit it to 1 response. So for this particular case, if I wanted you to keep doing this and do it until you fooling around with it, I could unselect this, but I'm going to make it so that there's only 1 response available. Respondents can have some different things. We can make, so within this Google Forms, using this, we can do different things with it. So because I made this a quiz, I want to release the grade immediately after submission. So as soon as you do all the questions and submit the test, you're going to get an email telling you what your score is, what your response is. Or I could set it up so that I could do it later after manual review, and I'd have to go through all the scores and see, okay. Stacy got this, Serena got this. I could go through and evaluate and see what I could see. But I'm going to go into this general, so I'm going to save this. These are the dimensions. If I wanted to just, I can do things like customize it too, of course, change it so that it looks different or different themes. Font style, I could choose decorative font. No, I'm not choosing decorative font. Formal, we'll say. Let's say formal, that looks pretty. So, and then I can preview it. Of course, that's what I'm seeing here is this preview. Oh, but sorry, I got to turn it on. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go send and wait, where is it? Collecting responses. Yes, okay, so now I'm going to turn it on. And now when you click or refresh that test, you should see the test and the questions. And you should be able to start taking the test.
It's an actual test.
Yeah, well, it's the one we made,
Oh.
but it could be an actual test.
How much is it worth?
100. Everybody see it? Yeah, so you gotta enter your email address.
And is it time throwaway one?
Yeah, your class email address. That's the one we use for everything here. You get in and start asking the test. And once you've gone through all these, of course, down at the bottom, you see the thing that says submit. And I'm gonna leave it open for, how long should I leave it open for? Tomorrow. No, because I want to show you how this thing works. Yeah, take your time. I mean, again, this is not part of your grade by any means, but it's, I'm showing you this so that you can figure out if you want to use it or not. Some of these things were from the last class that I may have not already talked about in this class, so that might not be familiar.
On his site.
I put it on the web page, in my web page for today. Down at the bottom of today's agenda, there's a link to the test.
Oh, I did.
Yep.
Do we add our email address on there?
Yeah, that's the only way you can take it, is if you add your email address.
That's exactly how I feel, like, I can't be on. I'll go back and I'll just sit, I'll come from this way. I know. I'm at one page and a half.
Good one?
This is their HHO robots. This is just for fun, right?
Yep. How much fun is it so far? Failed. We'll see. Let me see.
Is there a submit button?
Yeah, should be. And you're down at the very bottom when you're finished. One response so far. But of course, when you're doing this on computers, people can Google stuff all any time they want, right? But you sort of have to build that into your test design. Three responses so far. Anybody watching online? You can take the test too. Go to the link on the blog page. 4 or 5 responses. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need 7 responses. Two people still not finished?
Almost done.
Okay, good.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, there's no money on it, so.
One of them didn't even have an answer.
Is that right? Which one?
Yeah,
No correct answer?
yeah.
That would be interesting.
All right.
That Google platform.
Yeah. The Google platform is, and it says no correct answer.
No correct answers.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that's good, because I'll show you how to fix it. One more still to come. Who's that?
Mm.
You?
No.
Lily?
Not done yet. I'm not.
Edith, are you wait? Okay. We'll wait. Okay, everybody's in. Now you can see this on my dashboard. So this was the questions, this is the test you took. But now I switched over here so I can see that there's been 7 responses to this test. So I click at it and I'm going to go look at it in the responses view and see, well, first of all, who responded. So you had to join by email, so your emails are listed on here. So that if I'm going to be grading and scoring and recording this stuff, that's going to be there. But I can see different things. So now I can see the averages and the points distribution. So if you're doing stats for your classes, you can do this. You can see the most frequently missed questions. So the first one, what does RSS stand for? These are questions with less than 50% correct response rate. So what if I get a less than 50%, if less than half the people in this class got this question right, what does that mean?
Real simple syndication. You're asking for the answer.
Yeah, so for example, that's what it means here though. Usually it means that I didn't teach it. So if half the class doesn't even recognize this, it means either half the class was not paying attention or wasn't there, or I didn't teach the content. So I'd want to check and make sure in my lesson plan that I actually taught this content if I'm testing on it. So same thing with all these things. You can see what's the singularity. As I said, I left it in there. We haven't even talked about it. I don't think we talked about it in this class so far yet, have we? Singularity. Somebody guessed. Got it right. Or, well, this is I don't know, the second last question. The singularity, what's the singularity? Or what's
Oh, I guessed it, that was me.
sure, or what's a walled garden? Some of that, again, you can use your test-taking wisdom. You've taken multiple choice tests. You know how multiple choice tests are built. You can probably guess. And that's one of the shortcomings of multiple choice tests too. It doesn't necessarily test your content knowledge, it tests your ability to take a test. So if you're a good test taker, you could probably walk up to this test without knowing any of this and get a reasonable score. So anyway, so this is what this Google Forms though is letting us do, is doing this level of analysis. So it's telling me that frequently, and again, as I'm planning my lessons and planning my assessment and working with student responses, I can figure this out. So this one, 6 out of 7 people got this one right. Okay, that's good. We'll say that's good. Let me see. 1 person out of 7 got this one right. 5 out of 7 got this one right. So that's
that
pretty
one
good.
was tricky. I almost picked the first one.
This one, 5 out of 7 got this one right. 2 out of 7 got this right. And we haven't even talked about clay shirky, so I don't know why you'd expect to know about it. But a couple of people guessed right. It's good. You might have heard of it. Moore's Law, I was just talking about it, right? So hopefully that was familiar to most people. 4 out of 7 got podcast. So that's interesting. Skype is an example of VoIP, is right. Posting information online using an online web lab is called blogging. Everybody got that one right. Choices were, again, this is another one. If you had just use your test-taking powers, you could probably get that one right. What's trolling? Is it rickrolling? Is it ranting? No. So somebody's set this question up so it's it's a giver, it's a gimme, right? And sometimes when you're doing tests like that, you want to have some gimmies in there, dispersed throughout, so people don't get halfway through and say, oh shit, I don't know anything. I haven't answered it. I didn't know any of these things. Oh, I knew this one. I knew this one, this one. So again, this is considering the affective component of test taking. And test taking is usually a stressful event under most circumstances for some reason. It's our punitive system, I guess, or our, anyway. So if you can build in something like that, a little bit of self-supporting thing, that's good. Okay, so that's an analysis on, that's the summary analysis. I can go by question. So if I click on question, this question was learning that is active, constructive, and long-lasting. There were 6 responses. One of them, learning that physically engages a person. So somebody fell for that distractor, right? So, and then if I go through them question by question, I can do an analysis of each question and figure out, was it a good question, or if it was we're going to come across, which one was the one that didn't have an answer?
The Google platform is
Let me see if I can go find it.
open source, closed source, without
Right.
source code, shared source code.
Okay.
I put open source, visible code, I guess not. Shared?
Is that your iframe here?
Okay, Google platform is open source visible code. So, and we saw
I
that.
had that right then.
Did you?
Yeah.
Good. 5 ungraded responses. Okay, so maybe I jiggered up something with building this particular question. Let's go back and look at this and I'll show you how to fix things like this too. And what happens invariably, especially if you're writing 100 question tests, which is actually a pretty standard test for lots of technical subject areas. Building a 100 question test can be interesting. And then looking at how individuals performed on this. So these are everybody's email that submitted this. This is VGB, whoever you are. 7 people responded to this. This is how www. This is the next one, mom. This is JE50. So I can see each individual's pattern responses in the test. So I can figure out what's going on. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this off and say I'm not accepting responses anymore. And I can actually go now and look into this. It's got a spreadsheet. It actually puts everything into a Google spreadsheet. In this case, I'm going to create a new spreadsheet for this particular class. But if I've got teaching a class and I'm doing a whole bunch of multiple choice tests, I will create a spreadsheet where I can put together all of the different scores from every one of these tests. So I'm creating this one, linking this test to this spreadsheet, and now I can see when this test was written, who wrote it. So if I know whose email this is, of course it's anonymous in this case, and then I can go through question by question. It gives me a spreadsheet analysis about each question, how many responded properly, so in a spreadsheet format.
Can you go back?
Yeah.
No, how come my email is there?
Right here?
Yeah.
Is that the one you used?
No,
Oh.
that's my personal email. I don't even use that.
The only would be here is if you had entered it, because I wouldn't have any way to edit.
What if I did? I did.
You must have.
I did.
And that's fine. I mean, there's no. Let me see, because here. Yeah, it's this is the address that you used to.
Oh my
That you entered into the forum.
I must have been into like a.
No, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The only thing now is that I'm going to give you a response. I'm going to send responses back to everybody, and you're going to get a score. So let me see, where does it say this now? Where is it?
Yeah. From here?
Yeah.
It says Gmail.
But it's all like, have you used this, afternoon?
I use it on my phone. Oh, really?
Because that's what I put on there, and I just back it, so it's really- you don't know that.
So actually, I think if you go check your emails now already, there should be, and if you're checking that, you're gonna have to check the one that you use for this. There should be a message in your Gmail. I should have taken the test myself too. Anybody got an email yet? So it should be coming. So usually as soon as you submit, it does the analysis, and look in your trash, maybe look in your spam filters or something. Nothing?
No.
Because release grade immediately after every submission. I don't know why it's not doing it. But it's supposed to, I mean, as soon as you say submit, it's supposed to immediately do the assessment, does it computer speed, and sends you a email message. So. Did I forget something? Getting a notification, specific form. No, it should be there. This shouldn't matter. Oh. Don't know. Maybe I did something wrong. Anyway, you should be getting an email notification with how you did on this particular test. Looking back into this test, though, we can figure out some things about it. And I forget what I did this on. I did it on a few things. Well, I'm going to edit this test, and so that I can change some things about it. So, for example, I'm going to go find the one question that I'm pretty sure I added this to. There's a question about connectivism. And I should have shuffled that around a little bit. Here's connectivism theory. So here's the question, this particular question about constructivism. You can see that I've checked off, this is the correct answer. Here is the distractors. Here's the answer key. So I had one point for this answer. In this particular question, if you go back and you'll get it, when you get your analysis on there, it's going to give you feedback, but it's going to give you, what's going on? We're supposed to give a feedback here, so, well, I'll do it now. So I forget, maybe it was a different, oh, you know what it was? It was a different question. But I'll show you how to do this. So for every incorrect answer to this question, I want people to be able to get the correct answer for it. So I'll say check this here, this web page to review. To spell it right. I before E. So now I'm going to go over here and find a link to something connectivism. And find, I'll just take the Wikipedia entry, for example, and copy that link. Now go back to this test. And in this answer, I'm going to create a link, put a link into this. So the link is here, and this is connectivism. So if you got this question wrong, it's going to give you a suggestion saying you can go to this website and review. So you can build each question along here too. If you get it right, well then you got it right. But if you got it wrong, well then you want your students to be able to review what they got wrong and correct their wrong responses. And that's the real power of a test, is that if you give immediate feedback and give immediate resources to correct any errors. So that's one of the things that's a bit marvelous about the Google Forms version of this test. Where's the one? I think, well, it's cognitive learning, I think, as I did it. Yeah, so if you look at when you get your review test, there should be, review you'll get this information, says review the material on this site, and it should link to a web page that talks about cognitive learning, or the learning domains, I think is what I put on this thing. So anyway, that's the fun of it. Why it's not giving you responses? Don't know. It should have sent you a response as soon as you submitted your questions, as far the way I got it set up anyway. So, oh no, here, look, sorry, release scores. I forgot. Release scores to all respondents. Yes, send emails and release. Okay, I did forget to switch one thing. I should have switched it off initially. So, okay, now look at your email. There you go. Did you pass? Did you pass?
No.
So what would the pass be? 21 out of, how many out of 21?
But there was one wrong answer in
Yes,
there.
yeah, oh yeah, I should have gone and checked that one too. Go into that question and
So
which
my
one,
marks should change?
you should get a, yeah, you should get a, so that's why I would go now then, if I had a bad question like that and somebody pointed out to me, I could either go back and check the question and see who got it wrong and who got it right. So maybe go find that, I'll go find that Google question. Here it is. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Google platform. So here, this is the question. Yeah, so there was actually no, was there? Yeah, so what happened is here, I didn't set one as the correct answer. So now I got to go into here and figure out which is the one that's the correct answer, and I got to check it off. So if I click it now it's got a correct answer. I don't know what that's going to do now to our grading. Maybe it'll fix it.
Change, wouldn't it?
I wonder. That's what I'm curious about.
Your graph there.
Let's see what happens. I'll try it. So I want to look at the responses to that question.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Did it change it?
Yeah, I think so.
Where is it? Yeah, so 5 people got that right. So it should have changed your score. I don't know if it's going to change you another score here. Let me go see here. No, this is in the spreadsheet for that particular question. Where is it? Google platform. So it's listed on here. So it will record now in the spreadsheet that changed the grade on this.
Put my email in there. Right on top.
Anyway, you see what it is, and you should try it. Build a little test. Just make 4 or 5 questions, and you can send it to me or send it to whoever, just to experiment with and see how it works. Because again, as I said, if you're doing this on a routine basis in your classes, depending what you're teaching, some subject areas where recognition of material is important, and again, it'd be probably middle years where the expectation is people, recognize information. Yeah. Multiple choice tests are an appropriate way of doing it. So if you're creating them by hand though, who's made a multiple choice test by hand? Just writing it up. Think about it. Got to type it all out. Got to put it in there somehow. Got to figure out all the responses. Got to administer it. Got to distribute it. You got to collect it. You got to analyze it. You got to enter all of the information, the scores about it. You got to do your analysis of your item by item analysis of these things to make sure you got a good test. So it's painful. Unless you got technology like this, and technology like this, you saw how easy it was. Took me, I don't know, maybe half an hour basically to build this test. Took me 1 click to distribute this test. 1 click to distribute the responses to the test. So it's got some interesting possibilities. So questions, comments? We'll wrap up. I thought I said we were going to wrap up early, but I guess that's not very early.
Okay, have a good weekend.
Yes. Anybody got a question? Anybody need a hand with anything? That good? Yes, or if you're I'm online all the time, so if you got a question that you're working on something on the weekend, Skype me. It's easy. You too. Safe trips.
Safe trips.
Yeah, see ya. Okay, I'll turn off this broadcast now.